welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unlimited. Tonight I'm having to fly solo. My co host Leo is not able to make it. Hopefully, he will be with us for the next go around. We have a very special guest tonight. I think the show is going to be real good. There should be a lot of information that maybe you've not heard before. We're going to talk about some issues that are maybe not local for us. Then we got some stuff that is local here in the United States, specifically Tennessee, Kentucky area that we want to talk about as well. My special guest is Justin Decker. He lived and spent some time living in the Amazon, and he is very big into cryptids, very astute and studied in cryptids. But we want to also talk to him tonight about his time living in the Amazon. There's some very good information there that I think that people will enjoy. Before I bring Justin on, I want to talk a little bit about the Amazon, specifically Colombia. It is an area that only makes up about 10% of the Amazon rainforest. The vast majority of the rainforest is unexplored. It's just too thick. You can't get through it. But over the last 50 years, the Amazon has lost about 20% of the Amazon due to deforestation. They're clearing it off. If I remember correctly, about 80% of that deforestation is due to cattle ranching. Believe it or not. This area in general in the Amazon is known as the lungs of the earth, and it's home to a lot of mysterious creatures and animals and insects. And we're going to learn about some of that stuff tonight from Justin because he did live there. So I guess I'll go ahead and bring Justin on to the show, and we'll see how he's doing and get an update maybe on his thoughts about a lot of topics actually, but we want to start out with talking about the Amazon. Hello, Justin. Can you hear us? We can't hear you, my friend. No, can't hear you, man. No, I can read your lips though, but that don't count. Well, it's funny. Before the show, we could hear you just fine while we was in the green screen. No, I can't hear you. Do you want to pop back out and back in and see if that fixes it? Okay. Technical difficulties. That makes it fun. And believe it or not, we've been sitting in here talking for a while. I sent you another link, Justin, just in case if you want to pop out and back in. Let me see if I can. I have to kick you, and then you just come back in. There we go. So now you get to listen to me, I suppose. But me and Justin talked a little bit before the actual show started, and everything was working great. And then when we actually go live, we can't hear him anymore. So that's kind of how it works, I guess. Anyways, for you people that's in chat, if you actually have a question, we're going to try to monitor chat a little bit better, even though I'm by myself. If you have a question that you specifically want to ask Justin during the show, type your question out in caps, all caps, and that should help me see it. And if we get the opportunity, I will ask him the question. Hopefully he can pop back in here in just a little bit, and we can get to rolling with the show. Just what me and him talked about before the show, and what I guess you call it the green room. Very interesting. I've known Justin for several years now. Noticing in the chat that Guy said he and his wife spent weeks of their lives living in the Amazon rainforest. That's cool. So you do know a little bit about it then. Interesting place. And looks like we have a bot in there in the chat room already. So, but yeah, like I say, I've known Justin for several years now, and had a chance to meet him a few times, and me and him plan on getting out and doing a few things, doing some hiking and stuff. But of course, in today's world with COVID and the hectic life, we all live, it makes it hard. So. For anybody that's just joined us, we're waiting on our guest to pop back in. He had an audio issue, so we are waiting on him to come back into the stream. And when he does, we'll continue hopefully with the show. While we wait, I think I'll play you an advertisement just to kill some space. Enjoy.
And that was the moment that changed my life, when I saw a 9+ foot tall, bipedal, hair-covered creature stand up.
All right, guys, that was that little advertisement trailer is my latest film, Bigfoot Witness, the Jason Moore story, which is available on Amazon and a few other places, and hopefully a whole lot more places soon. Justin has rejoined our green room, so we're going to see if we can bring him on the screen, and hopefully he's got audio now. Tell me I can hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Hey, I can hear you now.
All right. See, I told you. There's always technical difficulties with me.
Yeah, and everything was smooth before we actually went on the air.
Yeah.
Was
exactly.
it the headset?
I think so. I was trying to use my tablet as opposed to my phone.
Yeah.
But like we said, it was working fine for a good 10 minutes before we started.
Yeah. Well, I did introduce you and talk a little bit about where you lived in Amazon. That's kind of what I want to start with. Tell us a little bit about your life when you lived there, some of the things you experienced, why you were living there. I mean, how did you become a person who lived there? Tell us about that.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Colombia, where you were talking about earlier. My parents were missionaries with a group called New Tribes Missions. And initially their job down there was contact missionary work. Like you said, the majority of the jungle is unexplored. And my dad's initial job while we were down there was to explore the jungle and find uncontacted native tribes. That was his first priority when we moved down there. They would hear rumors of tribes from other indigenous tribes down there, try and find a general local area using the maps and the river systems. And then him and his team of guys will literally go and explore the jungle looking for signs of these tribes.
And that is dangerous. People may not know that these uncontacted tribes, it's very dangerous because most likely they're going to kill you. With a very good chance they're going to kill you. That's so
absolutely.
That's a brave.
You got to realize that a lot of these tribes have never been in contact with anybody outside of their tribe.
Right. And there's still some in today's world that's never been contacted.
Absolutely. So that's what brought us down there in the first place. My dad did contact work for a while. Then they switched him over to a tribe that had already been contacted, but was considered hostile and non-friendly. They were called the Maku tribe. Some of my earliest memories of being in the jungle are what we call it the lake house. It was a house built on stilts in the middle of the lake, literally. And the reason for that was safety. The tribe, like I said, was still hostile. They were still potentially dangerous and would kill us. What my dad and his team would do is they would go ashore when the tribe was there and interact with them, try and talk to them and learn their customs and do what they needed to do. Eventually, though, they would make some mistakes, some social blunders. The Indians would get mad at them, and so they'd have to come back out to the safety of their houses. They didn't have boats so much. They didn't do much swimming. They were afraid of the water because of the local anacondas and the black caiman, so we were relatively safe way out in the water, past the distance of their spears and their blowguns.
So that was really, even though it was dangerous, it was very adventurous as well, I assume. I mean, I guess it was kind of exciting as well.
Oh, absolutely. I have memories of fishing out the window at my house, every little boy's dream, literally just throwing a pole out the window, catching fish, bringing them in. Sometimes catching fish that were so big we couldn't bring them in. We'd have to haul over to the neighbor and have them come cut the line for us. One time we caught a turtle. It's called the mata, which is a big giant turtle down there, freshwater softshell turtle. And we had to have the neighbor come over and clip the line. Definitely a lot of fond memories of growing up like that.
Well, earlier, you was talking about some of the wildlife there, and people, hopefully they can see on the screen is what's known as a howler monkey. And you was talking a little bit about that, and something that I think you said your dad had experienced and seen. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, sure. Yeah, that right there is a red howler. We had two different species, red howlers and black howlers. Looking at their body size, they were one of the biggest primates we had down there. Not the tallest, but definitely the heaviest and the bulkiest. Probably the tallest we had would be the gray cherico monkey, or we call them churucos. Gray woolly monkey, they're also called. And those are pretty much the biggest primates we have. As everybody knows, there's no New World apes in the Amazon or anywhere in the New World. So that brings to the story with my dad. They were out doing the jungle exploring. This was their phase of being out in the jungle looking for tribes. And they were off on a tributary of the Orinoco River basin. I believe he said the river was called the San Bernardino River. And they were just going along, traveling the river, him and two other guys. And the thing to realize is river travel in the jungle is not like you see in the movies. It's not birds everywhere and tapirs drinking from the water and all this wildlife. The sound of the motor is going to scare all those animals away. So actually seeing any animals along the river on those trips is very rare and definitely cause for notice. So this particular trip, they had just rounded a bend in the river, and way off up in the distance, up in the trees, they could see 3 to 4 large black primates. And it was very unusual because of their size. Given the distance that they were from these trees, there's no way they should have been able to see them the way they did. My dad describes them as basically like a chimpanzee. We're talking about 4 foot tall, He said they were muscular in build. He did not notice if there was any tails attached to them. But they definitely saw them, and for a few seconds they were able to see them until they caught the sound of the motors, and they took off through the trees. And he described it as a very high rate of speed. And they move very similar how they would expect a spider monkey to move. So reaching out through the canopy and basically just swimming through the canopy. It definitely caught their attention for the size and the speed, but to them it was just one of those like, that's an interesting thing moment. I wonder what those were. And then they just kind of kept on going with their trip. The really interesting part that caught my attention after this is talking to my dad. I was probably about 16, already really big into the cryptid world and cryptozoology, and discussing it with him. I brought up a picture of Deloy's ape. Now, some of you may be familiar with that, and it's very disputed. A lot of people think it's a hoax picture. All it really shows is a white-faced spider monkey. And I showed that picture to my dad, and he said, no, that is definitely not what he saw. He insists on the build. It was a bigger build, bulkier, just like a chimpanzee style, but definitely muscular. And that's what really clinched it for me, because there is no known creature like that in the Amazon.
Speaking about the different creatures and primate type species, there's also
Sure.
a lot of deadly things that can end your life. Have you had any experience or run into anything like that? That if you're not careful, you can get bit, stung, and it could kill you.
Well, I mean, that was everyday life for us. Down in the jungle, like before we would go outside, you take your boots and you shake them out because you might have a snake or a scorpion hiding in them. Or usually in my case, there was a toad or a frog hiding in them. But that was just everyday life, is that awareness and that cautiousness of what's around you. We had everything on land. We had giant centipedes that had like toxic venom that they could burn like fire. We had fertilized snakes on land. We had jaguars on land. Not to mention all the spiders and tarantulas and ground wasps and pretty much everything in the jungle wants to kill you one way or the other. This is kind of how you have to look at it.
Well, I think that's nature. Nature in general. I think it wants to kill us. Everything seems
Sure,
like
absolutely.
every virus wants to kill us, so to speak. How was the sleeping arrangements? How'd you have your beds and areas like that? I mean, I know you probably had them up off the ground, I would assume.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I spent my preschool years out in the jungle. We ended up moving inland with this tribe, the Maku tribe, once they became friends with them. And so they had a garden in the middle of their territory, an old garden that they weren't using anymore, and they gave us permission to move there. Okay, so my brother-in-law Sean is in the chat room. He's saying I'm supposed to give a shout out to my sister. Apparently the natives offered my parents a goat for her, is what they're saying. And I see my nephew Ben is in there as well.
Okay. So what did you do with the goat?
I don't know. That was before my memory in there, I guess. But yeah, so we moved out to this garden and we built a house. It was mostly made out of mud. The lower half was made out of mud, and the upper part was made out of wood for ventilation, and we had big screens and stuff in it. Now the roof was made out of tin, and it was painted green, and the house was back up off the airstrip a ways because we needed to camouflage ourselves. We talked about the dangerous animals, but the biggest danger for us, my parents being American missionaries, what came in two categories. It was the coqueros, which is the cocaine growers, the drug lords. And then also at the time, there was the communist rebel group called FARC. Now, either one of those would, if they saw us or found us, would come in and kill us and take all of our supplies and possibly use our airstrip that my dad had built out there with his team and use it for their operations. So that was one of the biggest things we had to worry about out there in the jungle. But as far as sleeping arrangements, back to your original question, I remember just sleeping in a hammock with a mosquito net. It was my bed in the jungle, and I have pictures on my Facebook page. Y'all are willing to go on my Facebook page and take a look. that was how we slept for the most part, was in a hammock and a mosquito net. Now, my parents, my dad being who he is, wanted to have some luxury in the jungle because it's a hard life out there and hard work. And, he was going sun up to sundown. So he actually brought in a waterbed.
Whoa.
And about 100 yards down the airstrip was a river, or a creek, basically, a caño. And my older brothers, I had 2 older brothers and an older sister out there. They basically got 5-gallon buckets and hauled water up to fill that waterbed up.
Fill the waterbed. Do they
Fill the
even make
waterbed up.
waterbeds anymore? I thought seen a waterbed.
I don't even know. I don't even know.
I had a friend, his sister had one, and she always went to work early in the morning, and we would go in there and get in her waterbed because it was heated. It was real nice.
Oh.
That's when I was young. I was a teenager, but we
Sure.
had a waterbed in our house when my wife first got married. But I don't know if they even make them anymore.
I don't know. But I can tell you that waterbed ended up being a huge blessing for our family. During our time in the jungle, my dad contracted malaria 7 different times.
Man.
And there's 2 different types of malaria, the type that attacks your body and the type that attacks your brain, your nervous system. And he's had both. But the biggest thing that helped him was being able to strip the sheets off that waterbed and lay on it when he had his fever. And because it's the water and it was so much cooler, it just basically would suck that fever right out of him and would keep his body heat under control. And so while it was, a pain to kind of have to fill it up, and I was too young for that. I wasn't strong enough to haul the water buckets yet. But it was definitely a blessing to be able to have it out there. So good call on my dad's part having it out there for us.
Yeah, it turned out to be very helpful, other than just
absolutely.
What was the temperatures like? Daytime, nighttime temperatures? Was it pretty hot and muggy most of the time?
For me, it was normal. Like I didn't pay attention to it. But I guess the average, temperature, especially out in the jungle, you're talking 100 degrees. Humidity is always 100%. You're in the middle of the rainforest, right. So you're always wet. Everything's always damp. But growing up, that was just normal for us. Now, it gets above 80 degrees and I don't like it. I'm going to go hide in my air conditioning. But back then, you just went outside. If it got too hot in the middle of the day, you'd come inside. Like I said, our house was made out of mud and clay, so it was always pretty cool inside, and we'd be able to just kind of temperature control. And that's why most countries, especially Latin countries, have siesta time. They shut down during the middle of the day. And they all go home. Businesses close, schools will shut down, and everybody goes home and just kind of rest and relax because it's the heat of the day.
Oh, I like that idea. I mean, can we vote?
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Well, did your dad's sighting, is that something that kind of sparked your interest in cryptids and unknown?
I wouldn't say it sparked my interest because the interest was always there for me. Growing up in the jungle, I always had an understanding that there was so much out there that's unknown and undiscovered. We were coming across things all the time where I was told, scientists don't know what this is, or, we're possibly the only so-called white people that have ever experienced this, seen this, have done this. And so I already grew up with that mentality of there's unknown out there. It just kind of piqued my interest and really kind of brought it home and made it personal that my dad had this experience.
Well, how long have you actually been studying cryptids? I mean, seriously studying them. I know you've had an interest, like you say, most of your life. But how long have you really dug in and really studied them hard?
I can recall being about 14 years old when we really got the internet in my house and the computer, and I would get on the internet, and what I would do is I found the BFRO database, even back then. And I would sit there literally for hours reading case after case after case after case after case. I'd get books I could find. I'd go to the library, and anything I could find on any type of fantastical creature or weird phenomenon or anything strange, I just totally absorbed it in because I was so fascinated by it all.
Well, now when I was 14, there wasn't no internet. So my entertainment and my learning about weird stuff came through hand-me-down stories from parents and grandparents and things like that. But yeah, when I was 14, there was no internet, not even the slow dial-up stuff.
It was just starting to come out. I remember we had a family friend that started up his own dial-up internet business, and that's what we had our internet through back in the day.
I used to sell it back years ago. I had a little out of business, and that's when the internet first started coming out. And I'm still using my very first email I ever had. I'm still using it. I've had it forever. But we sold a little. It used to come in a little CD, and you could sell it to people, and
Yep.
they go sign up, and that they don't do none of that no more. But yeah, it's the BFRO does have a real good database of
Absolutely.
sightings, and I like how you can go basically in any state, any county, and read in your
Hmm.
particular area. Now we do that on our website, but all the cases that are on there are mostly the ones that either I have researched myself or have been sent to us or something like that. It's not just uh, very few national sightings that's been done
Right.
by someone else. So and we use the Google mapping system, and you can zoom right down into the area, and it kind of helps in a way. Even the BFROs does gives you an idea of an area of how many
Sure.
sightings have been in there. And I know a lot of people frown on old sightings. I like old sightings because it helps establish a history of an
Absolutely.
area. And you was talking about when you was 14 and you was looking at these sightings. Well, now as you've grown into adulthood, I'm sure you've seen other sightings in those same areas over the years.
Absolutely. That's kind of the key to my research. What I do, I don't get out into the field a whole lot. Never have been able to. And now with my health conditions I have going on, it's just not really feasible for me to get out there like you do and trek across the mountains and do all that. I do a lot of data mining, so most of my research is based on those old encounter sightings. And the way it works for me is I can read these encounters and I start picking up details that are like a thread between all these different sightings and all these different encounters. And that's what I kind of latch onto. And I can almost kind of build a profile of not just of the creature in general, but of specific areas, different habits in specific areas, different things like that. And it's really fun when you get validation, when you hear other sightings 20 years later that are showing the same type of behavior from the areas or some of the same threads.
Right. Well, that's like me and Leo was talking about in the last show. He has found stick structures that are almost identical to stick structures I found here, which is
Sure. Yep.
and he's in Canada, I'm in Kentucky, so it's unusual. But I've seen other people too over different states. They find stuff that's very similar to what I find, and we
Sure.
basically don't know each other. We're just sharing information. And so if
Hmm.
you're studying historical data and new data, people who are able to get out like me, you know me personally, and
Yep.
I actually get out there. I don't just make up stuff or
Absolutely.
steal somebody else's stuff or whatever. So it validates even your historical data, your research that you're doing online. The stuff that maybe I find helps validate what you're looking at and reading from other people that I've not read and don't know anything about. So it is valuable. I think that kind of research is valuable as well.
Absolutely. I think we need all of it to be able to start piecing together some of the different things of the mystery. We need the information from the old reports. We need the information from guys like you that are going out there and seeing stuff and experiencing stuff nowadays. It all has to come together. I hate this idea of, oh, you're not a real researcher, you're an armchair researcher, is the phrase that they like to use.
Yeah.
But nowadays there's so much information out there that you can go through. There's hundreds of groups like yours all across the country, across the
Right.
world that are out doing that field research. But there's very few people looking at the data that's coming from that research,
Right. Yeah.
right? In every scientific endeavor, there's always two phases. There's the gathering of the data, but then there's also the analyzing of the data. And
Right.
if you gather all the data in the world, but if there's nobody actually analyzing and looking at it all, then it's
Right.
useless data,
And the
you
thing is,
know?
you will see these repeat indicators. I'm sure you've probably already noticed it between people who are genuine in what they're doing, uh, even in their sightings or in the research. I know you've probably seen repeat indicators, same pattern over and over and over and over,
Hmm.
which validates that it's most likely genuine behavior or
Absolutely.
or a hallmark of a Bigfoot sighting or whatever.
Absolutely. Even talking about stick structures, I'm friends with Dr. Igor in Russia,
Hmm.
and he's got a lot of evidence out there of the exact same kind of stick structures that are being found all over the U.S. here.
Yep. And he makes
You
quite
know,
a few
I
trips
have,
here to the U.S.
yeah, that's where I met him, was here in the U.S. at one of our conferences.
Yeah.
I have a guy over in Papua New Guinea, and he's finding stick structures. I know a guy in Malaysia. He's finding stick structures. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's the same basic type of structures. Now, what they are, what they're for, the meaning behind them, I have no idea, and I don't pretend to, like some of these other people do. But I know they're there, and I know they're real, and that's kind of the key factor with it, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I think the meaning may vary per tribe or per area, per region. Uh,
Sure, depending on the structure, absolutely.
and some of the structures, people want to think they're maybe meant for the researcher, but not necessarily. I think there's more that's for somebody else in their group or another group. It's not actually meant for us
Sure,
most of the time. Now, if you're interacting with a group like gifting or something like that, and they leave you a structure, then that's a little bit different. But recently, we had somebody say that Bigfoot does not make any structures; that everything that people are saying is a structure is all natural, and that's just total. That's somebody that's not been out there and not studied the subject at all, in my opinion.
absolutely. I can't stand the absolutism that people got going on. It
Yeah,
has to be either 100% Bigfoot or 100% human. And any primate, any great ape out there, it mimics anything. So just to be able to understand that concept, if they're seeing people doing something in the woods, building a shelter, they could go and mimic it in and of itself.
right.
So just that whole idea of absolutism to me is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I know you have researched some, and I know you have a limitation because of your health, but I know you have researched a lot online. You're very intelligent on the subject. But now
Hmm.
it don't take a whole lot of looking into to discover that, yeah, there's something to this. This is not Mother Nature. This is not the wind. Uh, the straight line winds didn't come through and knock this over into a teepee. On top of a mountain somewhere.
Right.
It don't take a whole lot of effort to research and find out there's something to stick formations,
Absolutely.
and they shouldn't be
Absolutely.
just dismissed. Blanket statement and just dismiss them. And some people do
I
that.
agree. Yep. Now, I can understand not putting a huge emphasis on them, right? Because the information we can get from them is limited, other than the fact that all we can really truly say as a fact is this was not done naturally.
Yeah.
Unless we specifically have visual confirmation, seeing a structure being built, or let's say footprints in and around the structure, it's kind of hard to say exactly what did it,
Mhm.
but at the same time, we can say it's definitely not natural.
And it wasn't done
You
by
know,
squirrels.
right? You got 200-pound logs, put up into a teepee. Your options are limited.
I found quite a few tracks around some of the ones I found, and then
Sure.
I've had, even in around some of the areas where I found them, I've had either I found tracks, or I've had some kind of audio, some kind of vocal
Hmm.
or something like that in the area, which which is unusual if you
Right.
find something that's one thing I documented, like I was telling last week. Excuse me, was I documented the same structure for almost 3 years, and it
Right.
changed. It changed over time. So that was something that I don't think it was Mother Nature doing it. It was a Bigfoot. But that's a real good area I was in. What other cryptids do you specifically like to study? Bigfoot we know is the number one guy, but what else do you like to study?
I like to study anything and everything. I don't call myself a cryptozoologist as much as I call myself a 14 researcher, because I'm into anything and everything weird and unusual. I like reading the backgrounds on it. I have my own theories on a lot of stuff, and there's so much out there that just fascinates me. Everything from the big trend right now is Dogman. A lot of stuff
Yeah.
going on with that. Um, one of the things I'm looking at right now is dinosaur reports,
I,
modern day
I know.
dinosaur sightings.
Yeah, the Congo's supposed to have, a dinosaur.
Not even. I've got 2 reports I just got last month from northern Georgia in the Appalachians down there. One was a pterosaur type creature, and another one was described as a velociraptor type looking creature you would see in the movies.
Now, I remember
And,
a velociraptor type report coming from out in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, about, I don't
yep,
know, probably 8 or 10 years ago.
absolutely.
So now, what are those,
Uh,
and where they come from and how they hide and all that stuff? I don't know, but
no idea, but the late J.C. Johnson did a lot of research out there
hmm
with theropods and tyrannosaur sightings, and most of them were small raptor type creatures seen running through the deserts, either along highways or off in the distance. Or I know he was working in an area that was river bottoms on Indian land, and they were finding tracks along the river bottom areas of three-toed dinosaur prints that obviously weren't fossilized; they were fresh. So, I mean, those are the things that fascinate me. I would never pretend to know what the answer is to those sightings, but just the fact that they're there just fascinates me.
well, are we? Is it safe to say that Bigfoot is your favorite cryptid?
Yeah, I'd say Bigfoot's probably my favorite. I think there's more evidence pointing to the existence of Bigfoot than anything else out there. And part of the whole phenomenon for me is the outright denial of the possibility of existence from all these different academia or the general populace, even.
Well,
It just blows
speaking
my
of
mind.
that, why do you think that academia would dismisses it so easily, or won't even look at it? What's your theory behind why they won't look at it seriously?
Well, to me, it's the same thing as why they won't approach creationism instead of evolutionism, right? Because they're in it for money, they're in it for tenure. To them, it's their job, it's their business, and they don't want to do anything to risk losing face or losing reputation. And when you start touching on subjects like Bigfoot, it's just there's an automatic ridicule factor to it. Now, I would say that that has probably lessened here in the past several years than what it used to be. But there's still a lot of that out there, and people just outright dismissing. And if you're even entertaining the topic, you might as well tell them you're chasing unicorns. And I really think that's the biggest thing. It's just that fear factor.
Well, I think there's a lot of bad information that is put out on purpose. We know
Absolutely.
they did this with the UFOs, and well, probably are still doing it with the UFOs. And I think that kind of keeps
Well,
it muddy and keeps it kind of a taboo subject for some people.
sure, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of the UFOs, I mean, the government just did recently in the past few months come out and admit to their existence.
Yeah, and
But
nobody
it
cares.
didn't make nobody cares. It didn't make any news. It wasn't a big thing, but they literally came out in an official report admitting the existence of UFOs.
Yeah,
But
nobody paid a bit more than anything. Didn't care. Uh,
not at all.
and I've seen several UFOs over my lifetime. Some interesting things, but maybe that'd be for another show. But back to Bigfoot. I would
Sure.
like to get your opinion and what you think about the Patterson footage of Patty.
Uh,
Uh, what do you think about
I
that?
I think it's a genuine film. Um, some of the enhancements done to it recently over the past few years is absolutely amazing. The stabilization features that they've been able to put on it. I'm 100% convinced it's a genuine film. 100%.
I always
Nothing
thought,
has ever been shown over the years. All these people claiming to have done it,
yeah,
it's just not feasible. Especially the clarity we can see things now. It makes it even less likely that it was somebody in a suit, which is the only other option.
right.
It's either a real Bigfoot or somebody in a suit. You don't really have a third choice there.
And
And
if
there's
it's a
so
suit,
many
it's great.
things. Yeah, I mean, it's not possible given the technology of the time. Even the current movie makeup artists at the time have said that it's not possible. Not possible.
You look at today's movies; they're probably not even up to that standard. I mean, some of them are a little
Not at
better than
all.
others, but you don't see the muscle movement normally in
Nope.
any
Not at
costume
all. There's so
nowadays.
many things. Yeah. Yep.
And I guess one of the biggest selling points for me was, uh, which M.K. Davis has done a lot of good work
Yep.
with the film, was seeing the toes on the foot flex up and down
Sure.
during the walk. Uh, that would be pretty hard to do with a suit or some kind of fake foot or something like that, especially back in what, 67
Sure.
or so. So I
Yep.
mean,
Or
to me
for
that was
me,
just
the thigh muscle.
yeah.
Like you could literally see the flexing of the thigh muscles. You're not going to get that in any suit, period.
No, I know they pad these suits now and they look muscular, but normally when they move, you don't see that movement in the muscle. You just see
Exactly.
the bulk, and it's a lot different. Everybody compares it to like the Planet of the Apes that came out, like
Oh,
'69 or whatever, and it's not even a comparison
not
as
even
far as
close.
detail. And I love the Planet of the Apes. I watch it. I usually watch this whole set at least once a year.
Sure.
Got the TV shows and got the cartoons and big Planet of the Apes fan. Got the original book is all based upon, which is slightly different.
Sure.
So it's just but nothing. It don't compare to Patty. The Planet of the Apes figures don't even ain't even close, really.
No, you're right. Guys talking about the herniation that you can see in the thigh. I mean, that's exactly right. Once they were able to stabilize it and zoom in and use all the current, there's just no way it was fake like they say it was.
Well, another thing too, I thought was really impressive on that is the breast. You can actually see the breast move uh, and
Sure.
sway. If
Yep.
you would think if it was something that they had just attached on there wouldn't be any movement to it. It would be something that was
Right. It'd be very
like
static. You wouldn't have the
right. You
natural
wouldn't have
movement
the
of it for
natural
sure.
movement, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I know there's some questions about Roger Patterson, what kind of dude he was, and he owed this one
Hmm.
money, and he told a few stories and things like that. Uh, well, that could be a lesson to everybody. If you're going to do that, when you do actually capture something, it's going to bring up questions
Sure. Well,
that you can't
we've got
avoid.
guys nowadays that are dealing with the same issue.
Sure, yeah,
Researchers nowadays, absolutely. I can name a
right,
few off the top of my head
yeah,
that are pretty much you don't even talk about them. You don't say their names because
no,
any association with them automatically,
right,
makes you a hoaxer.
yeah.
But
I know
that's,
a
I
few
mean,
of
if you think
those.
about it, if you look, if you were going to go out, especially in the '60s, looking for Bigfoot, you almost had to be a Roger Patterson personality type. I mean,
Oh
really,
yeah,
unless you were an academic, like we're talking Grover Krantz or Dr. Bindernagel, one of those kind of guys, they have an academic interest in the subject. But if you're just going to go out there and spend money, and you got to be that bigger than life personality to do that. So it
right.
doesn't surprise me at all when they talk about Roger Patterson and his showmanship and his storytelling. Well, of course, that's the kind of guy he's going to be.
Hmm.
I
Well,
get
now
that. That doesn't make what happened any less real.
exactly. Now Bindernagel was one of my favorites. I always liked
Sure.
him for some reason. I don't know. But you're right. Some of the personalities have to be big. And nowadays, the people get in trouble because their personality is so big, they will go ahead and fake evidence. And then when they
Sure.
do actually find something that's legitimate, people blow it off because, hey, man, it don't take
Yep.
long to ruin your reputation in the Bigfoot community.
No.
That's for sure.
I think a lot of times it actually comes across the opposite, though, Thomas. I think people find real evidence and they get excited for it
That
and
happens
they
too.
put it out there and they bill it, but then they have to keep building it to keep their name out there.
Yeah.
And so that's when I think there's a lot of the falsehoods come up.
Mm.
It's after the fact. Yes, they started off with great footage, they started off with great evidence, but then they got addicted to that spotlight and that fame. And as you know, you're not going to find something every time you go out.
No,
You're not going to find that groundbreaking footage. You know what I mean? And
no.
so to keep their interest and to keep their name in the spotlight, that's I think when a lot of the falsehoods come in.
I think so too. I think there's some researchers out there, like you say, that had legitimate sighting or evidence, and then they couldn't replicate it, They couldn't find anything else, and so they had to fabricate it. And just like you say, keep their name. It could become Bigfoot famous is what we always call it. And I think there's a movie or
Sure.
something called Bigfoot Famous now too. But we've been saying it for years. And I can tell you firsthand knowledge, Bigfoot Famous, it pays real good. It pays you a big goose egg most of the time, unless you hit the you get on TV and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
You might make a few dollars like that. I know one guy's made a lot of money at it, but if he came out today with something new, they'd eat him up, even though he's done burn them 4 or 5 times. But that's okay.
Yep.
If
Yep.
people want to go for it, just go for it. It's all I can tell them. I
Absolutely.
prefer to be honest. To me, reputation and loyalty is, man, that's top of the list for me. And if you don't have those two
Absolutely.
things, I probably won't fool with you a whole lot.
Absolutely. I
Uh,
got Jennifer complimenting my T-shirt here.
oh yeah, yeah.
She actually made this
That's
for me
your
for
saying.
Christmas. That's my saying, Viva Moose Ferox. Yep. And Jennifer, she's in the chat room. My girlfriend actually made 2 of my designs for me for Christmas. And that's one of them right there.
Great. Yeah, we know Jennifer very well. I've worked with
Oh,
Jennifer many
well.
times, and think a lot of her.
Absolutely.
She's worked many events that I've been at, and she's wrote articles for us and promoted our
Hmm.
films, I really like Jennifer. And I know recently her and her mother was in a car wreck, and
Yes.
I'm glad her mom's okay because that could have been very bad.
Absolutely. They're both on the mend, and there's still a lot of pain and stuff they're going to have to go through, but they're out of the hospital and they're starting to feel better. So very
Yeah,
thankful for that.
yeah, mama's not no spring chicken no more. That's very
No,
dangerous especially when you get up to that age. It don't take much to break a bone
nope.
or hurt you in a way. It's
She may not be a spring chicken, but I tell you what, Thomas, she's a tough old bird.
oh yeah, she is. Yeah, yeah, she sure is. It had to be for what that car went through. That's for sure.
Hmm. Yep.
Somebody asked a question about your thoughts on cryptids in other countries. Uh,
Sure,
anything
absolutely.
anything in particular stand out for you in other countries that maybe we don't have here?
Well, not so much that we don't have here, but the biggest thing that I find is the other Bigfoot type creatures that are found all over the world. And a lot of people don't realize that. Any of the major continents, except for Antarctica, has some sort of hairy hominid creature.
Yep.
Oh, looks like I froze up there a little bit. Whether we're talking China with the Yeren, like I said, I've got researchers in Papua New Guinea and Malaysia that I'm in contact with. I got researchers in Sweden that we have contacts with. South America has a lot of different cryptid hominid creatures throughout the Andes and the jungles where I was at. They're just all over the place. The only place in the U.S. that doesn't really have a Bigfoot creature is Hawaii. And they even have a Littlefoot called the Menehune, which is a
Sure do.
small bipedal red-haired critter. So everywhere has something. And again, that's just one of those tells to me that there really is something out there and something really, really going on.
Do you think it's more
But
accepted in other countries than it is here? The idea
I don't think so. I
about the
really
same?
don't think so because in talking with other researchers, they deal with a lot of the same roadblocks that we do. A lot of disbelief, a lot of the academic people saying there's no way. But at the same time, I think the locals in a lot of those places are more in touch with nature, more in touch with their environment. So I think on a local level, it's probably a little more accepted. My brother-in-law Sean's talking about chupacabras. Now,
Yeah.
there's a very interesting topic is chupacabras.
Well, let's talk about that. Also known as the goat sucker is what it was first kind
Sure,
of known as for most people. The goat sucker.
absolutely. The first thing to note is the proper name. The proper name is not chupacabra, it's chupacabras with an S, because in Spanish it would mean goat sucker, as in it sucks multiple goats, as opposed to chupacabra, where it would be singular, as in only one goat. So the proper name has the S on it. It's not a plural for the animal. And second thing that I find fascinating is the morphing of what the name was used for. So originally, in the early 90s, the chupacabras was known out of Puerto Rico. It's considered the first real internet cryptid, as they call it, because that's when the internet was exploding, and it was the first big hit on the internet was chupacabras. One of the most visited website of all time was dedicated to the chupacabras. But the original sightings out of Puerto Rico described it as a reptilian-type creature, the size of a large dog, hopped on two back legs, kind of like a kangaroo, would go down on all fours to walk, had spikes down its back,
Right.
big glowing red eyes, with a couple of reports of wings.
And that's
sharp
not the
pointed
description
teeth
anymore.
Now it's the blue dog out of Texas.
Yep,
It's the
that's
chupacabras.
it. Yeah, which is basically looks like a dog with a mange.
Yeah, absolutely. Now they've done testing now, and it's considered a distinctive species because of the crossbreeding and all this other kind of stuff with it. They call it the blue dog now.
Right.
And I have a good friend, Nick Valente, who's an excellent cryptid researcher. He's part of the North American Dogman Project, and I've been on several podcasts with him. And he's going, look, we know what the chupacabras is. It's this dog. And I have to tell him, well, sure, in the modern idea of what chupacabras is, sure. But when you go back to the original,
totally different.
It is totally different animal, totally different. And that fascinated me. I don't even know how that change happened.
That's me. I don't either. I know the first videos I ever seen showed all these goats, and I think it was some rabbits or something laying around. And they had these
chickens,
bite marks on them, and that was it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The drawing of what it looked like, and then all at once you see it in Texas, and basically it's a mangy coyote or dog, and that's it.
Yeah.
But that's not the original description.
One of the major reports that came out of Puerto Rico was actually from a law enforcement officer who was coming along at night, going down a night road, and one of these things jumped out of the bushes at him and hissed at him and kind of did a display charge at him and then took off. And this was a law enforcement officer, and he's saying this is what it looked like. He was the one that reported the big red eyes, and because it was staring him down, it's not a little coyote dog,
Well, people talk about when you have an encounter like that, or even with a Bigfoot, and if you have a weapon, which I'm sure probably the police officer did, one of the things they want to ask is, well, why didn't you shoot it? But the thing is, you're in such shock of actually seeing it, you don't think nothing about shooting it. And because I've had that experience, I've seen a Bigfoot, and I was not expecting, I wasn't looking for a Bigfoot, and I seen it, and I was just like, I just froze. I thought, that's a Bigfoot, and that's and you don't think nothing about it. Grab the camera and all that kind of stuff. Just gets kind of weird. You just kind of freeze.
It's already gone by the time you kind of wake up.
Yeah, that's this one that I seen. It moved so fast and so fluid. In 3 seconds, it was gone completely.
Absolutely gone.
It was just gone. And I was just standing there, slack jawed, because you wouldn't expect. And that's different, I guess, if you're out looking and you got your camera in the hand and they're close by and you're doing that kind of thing.
Sure.
But most sightings are random. Just like that police officer, I'm sure he wasn't driving down through there looking or expecting to see anything like that. So,
nope. I think he was on foot, is what the report said, that he was on foot.
Okay, well, he definitely probably wasn't expecting that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But it's funny how cryptozoology in general, creatures can morph and change over time. The beliefs, the behaviors, the appearance, and it does. The line kind of becomes more blurred over time on certain cryptids.
Sure.
A
big trend right now.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well,
I was going to say the big trend right now. Go ahead, Thomas.
Well, I was going to ask you what you think Bigfoot is. Where you think it comes from?
Been here the whole time. I reserve judgment because there's so many different things out there, so many possibilities I'm looking into. I believe there is historical data for them being around. I believe they've been with us a long time. There's a lot of historical context going all the way back to ancient Egypt and olden times. There's reports of Bigfoot-like creatures here with the First Nations people. Going back to, I don't know how we got a report from, the Vikings, but supposedly the Vikings encountered them. So there's definitely historical context. They've been around for a really long time. As to what they exactly are, I'm not even going to say. There's so many different things, and the more I research and the more I talk to experienced researchers, the more questions come up. Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, there's so many different fields of thought from aliens and UFOs to the aliens' pets. I mean, I've heard them even say that Bigfoot are interstellar criminals and they drop them off here and strand them as punishment. I mean, I've heard so many crazy things. To interdimensional beings. I think the most far-fetched one, as if those weren't far-fetched enough, was the idea that they're actually a group of shamanic tribal entities. I read a lot about this guy that supposedly lived with them in the Himalayas, the Yeti creatures, and studied their religion with them and learned all their secret spiritual stuff, and then came over to this country and used the same techniques, and now he can go into the woods and meditate and have 30 or 40 of them of a clan come around. I mean, you hear so many things out there. At some of it, you just have to go, okay, that's a cool story, bro, but yeah, I'm not going there.
I just kind of throw them under the primate label, and that's where I leave it, because I think,
Sure.
we try to tell people as well that there's a lot of different cryptids out there in the woods other than Bigfoot, which we know Dogman is probably the second most popular, but there's actually more than that.
Absolutely.
More rare. What crypto
we've actually
in the U.S. are you most skeptical of? That's a good question. I don't know. Right off the top of my head, I don't really know.
If you really look at it, I'm somewhat skeptical of all of them to start with, until I can find something that kind of verifies it for me. I think some of the hardest ones to get through are some of the one-offs. The Ohio Loveland Frogmen, right? Stuff like that. The Orscape Lizard Man. There's some different ones out there that you just kind of got to go, maybe.
Well, even like the one popular one is the Jersey Devil. That's a really odd one for me, because it's kind of like a platypus. It's got a lot of extra parts. Seems like,
yeah, absolutely,
leftover parts just stuck together and threw out there. Which they're seeing something, because the legend's been around so long. Somebody is seeing something, but what is it really?
Sure. Another big one right now, at least in the circles that I've in, is the Wendigo, and discussions of the Wendigo has popped up again. Or the prevailing theory, I think, with a lot of the circles is the Wendigo is just a native term for what people are calling the pale crawlers, or which originally started off as the rake, which if you trace the name of the rake, it's actually a creepypasta made up story.
Exactly.
But its description is very similar to that of what people are calling the pale crawler, which there are multiple sightings of. That's one that is becoming more and more popular. People are more and more willing to come out and talk about them. I think I'm probably most skeptical about that one right now, just because it is a completely monstrosity creature. There's nothing like it to look at it, right? So Dogmen, you have the wolf, you have the canine features. That's a little more familiar to us.
Right.
But the pale crawler, I mean, that's Gollum, essentially, from the Lord of the Rings looking creature. And there's all these fantastical attributes that it has, from being able to make its body so pale you can see right through it as a form of camouflage, to I've heard there's a story of that they actually feed on people, and certain groups of dogmen like defend the people, and they actually like battle these creatures. I mean, there's so much out there with it. I think a lot of it is based conjecture, which most of what we do is conjecture anyway.
Yeah.
But as far as skepticism, I think that's probably the major one that I still haven't really been able to pinpoint down anything real with it.
Right. Well, I think anytime we get a sighting report, we have to look at it somewhat skeptically.
Mm-hmm.
You want to try to, if you can, if you want to try to debunk it or come up with an alternative to what they
Absolutely.
might saw. But then when you go through that uh, list and you're left with other evidence and you can't really explain
Sure.
it away, then you got something that's unusual.
Sure. Now, I'm not real big on what I call negative evidence, which is circumstantial evidence, right? Well, it wasn't this, so it has to be this.
Right.
Well, no, all you really know is it wasn't this.
Wasn't that? Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
right. You can't say it's a negative evidence. You can't say, like, perfect example we were talking about earlier, the animal attacks that have happened in Cott County.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely
There's,
want to talk about that for sure. Uh, which
yeah,
which leads us into the dog man. Uh,
yep,
let's start by talking about the dog man a little bit. Then I want to get into that because that's a very interesting case. Uh, a lot of people want to associate dog man with being a Bigfoot, and while they're similar in appearance, they're actually really a lot different. To me,
sure,
a dog man actually resembles what the traditional werewolf more of what a
absolutely.
traditional werewolf was called, which that's what the old
Yep.
timers always called them, anyways. The name's kind of
Hmm.
morphed. But what do you think about the dog man? And then tell us about the case that's going on there in
Sure.
Tennessee.
So, basically, I think there's three things we have to bring up first, and whenever we talk about dogman, is definitions. Okay. So we have a dogman. The definition of dogman is like you said, a werewolf, but it's in that form naturally. It's always in the
Right.
form of the upright canine. Now, I say in the form of upright, but there's many reports of them being down on all fours, transitioning to upright, but it's always in its animalistic form. The term werewolf specifically applies to a human that, for whatever circumstances or reasons, transforms into one of these creatures.
Correct.
Okay? And then, as a subcategory of what I call werewolf, would be the term skinwalker. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because it's become a hugely popular catch all for any kind of weird stuff. Oh, I think I saw a skinwalker. Well, you don't know if you saw a skinwalker or not, right? Um, but when you look at the tradition of what a skinwalker is in the Native American lore, it's not a humanoid creature. It's not a werewolf. A skinwalker is a shaman that has gone through specific rituals to have the ability to transform himself into animals. Now, the mechanism of that, the specific rituals, it depends on tribes and who you're talking to. I've heard it's considered to be very dark magic. They usually involve the killing of a family member as part of one of the final stages of it. I've also heard that originally skinwalkers were used for good of the tribe as far as protection. We're talking like Twilight stuff, right? Where the wolves protect the people and then all that kind of stuff. But then over time, the power corrupted them and it turned into a dark magic thing. But the idea is they were able to don the pelt of various animals, not just wolves, and then gain the power of that animal or physically transform into that animal. But the understanding originally was that it wasn't an upright walking canine werewolf. It was literally a wolf or literally a coyote, depending on the region and what they were transforming into. But those are the three major areas when you're talking about dogman. Um, when I look into Bigfoot, there's certain things I looked for before I convinced myself that it was real. Historical data, how far back do reports go of Bigfoot type creatures? Is there a continual line of reports? So are they only found in ancient history and then now? Or is over the centuries have there been, reports that can be attributed to them? Is there any current evidence? And are people still seeing it? you know? And looking at dogman creatures, I see the exact same things. There is historical context of dogmen. Ancient explorers, we're talking Alexander the Great, we're talking um, all the way back, Marco Polo, right? Like all these other different explorers talk about coming across tribes of dog-headed men, or some version of that, the Cenocephaly. Ancient Egypt has dog-headed entities, and you can debate whether what that meant, if that was real, if that. But the point is, they were still there. We have in old Europe the reports of the werewolves, same types of creatures, right? Now they attributed certain attributes to them. It was a human changing, but to me, that's more of making up the mythology, the mythos of this creature that they're seeing. They see an upright walking creature. Well, it looks kind of like a person because it's on two legs, so we're going to build a story around it and make it a boogeyman, right? So I think that happened a lot. And we're talking all the way up to current days. There's footprints that have been found. There's supposed video evidence and photo evidence. There's supposed recordings. A lot of the stories have similar threads that go through them. And so a lot of the stuff where I look at Bigfoot and I go, I believe this is a real entity because I've never seen one. I'm finding the exact same stuff with dogman creatures. What it is, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate, but I believe there is something to the phenomenon for sure.
We don't have many dogman sightings here in my general area. We've had a few, so I've not studied dogman as much probably as I should. I know a little bit about them, of course, but where we don't, I've had a few sightings. We had a couple in Harlan. Well, one was about 4 or 5 years ago, and one was maybe 2 or 3 years ago of a dogman sighting. And we got one person up there who claims to have one on their property. It sleeps in the back of his car. He's got pictures of it and all this kind of stuff. But I actually talked to him on the phone. When you actually want to come up and look at the property, look at the photos, he won't do it. So, it makes me skeptical.
Sure.
Maybe he's having some kind of activity. I don't know, but we just don't get very many dogman reports in this area. Most people and most reports say that dogman is more aggressive than, say, a Bigfoot. And yes. I think that has fueled some of the things that you've got going over there locally.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what went on over there, because it's really it's a interesting story, but there's a crime here somewhere.
Absolutely.
Look at it, there's a crime here, and it's being blamed on a dogman. So tell us about
dogman creature. Sure.
About that.
So, the Appalachian area, all through Tennessee, the Appalachian, the Smoky Mountains, all the Blue Ridge, are kind of what they call hotspots for dogman sightings. So, a good amount of dogman sightings are coming out of the local region. So, what's happened is there was a couple of animal attacks in Cott County in the town of Newport, and unfortunately, 2 people died because of these attacks. They were on the same lone isolated road, same exact area, almost the exact same circumstances, just months apart. The big thing is the attacks were very ferocious. There's all kinds of reports of supposedly the bodies were consumed or they were torn limb from limb. These are all exaggeration of the facts. The facts are there was a chunk of an arm missing from the body. True, yes. One of the limbs of one of the victims was torn at the shoulder joint, not completely dismembered, not totally pulled apart, but it was definitely ripped. And you could tell they were canine attacks, and very vicious and very horrible. One person was found dead at the scene. The other one actually made it to a house and was able to get help and was transported to a hospital. But later on, she died and didn't make it. And these were kind of big news in the area if you were paying attention to the local reports and stuff. And it fascinated me, but immediately the cryptid community jumped on these were dogman attacks. These are dogman attacks. It's in East Tennessee. It was obviously canine or dogman attacks. And I'm going, well, wait a minute. Let's back up a little bit here. Let's take a look at the facts. And in reading the reports and the things that were released, there was definitely some oddities going on. Certain departments were being called in. The TBI was called in. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was called in fairly early on. Instead of the local like dog catchers, the domestic issues that would normally be called in, they were calling in wildlife resources to come in and check things out. I believe it was more had to do with the thoroughness of what was going on than necessarily any type of cover-up thing. Once everything was investigated and everything kind of dug out, what I found was in the reports, there was a local man in that neighborhood who was known for being very belligerent, who had previous altercations with the law, who had 3 cane Corso Mastiffs. And these dogs in the neighborhood were known for violence, were known for escaping and attacking animals. When police officers would confront this guy, he would threaten to sick the dogs on them. So this guy and these animals were very well known in the neighborhood.
And those are large dogs.
Very large, very powerful Italian Mastiffs. And if you have 3 of them, they're going to cause a lot of damage, especially if they're running under a pack mentality, right? And it is my understanding, and I want to say this out, this is stuff that I've read in newspaper articles and things that I've gathered. I've talked to some locals. I talked to a person that was friends with one of the victims and the victim's family. And just, I've done my due diligence on this as best as I can do. Jennifer and I even went down to the exact street, exact neighborhood. We did a Facebook Live video with it, driving up and down the entire street. We located the exact area where this happened. We located the guy's house. We located the house where the young lady had went for help. So, we went through and thoroughly searched this area at night because I wanted to get a visual of it. I want to get the feel for the area, kind of what was going on. And I will say the area that it happened is a creepy area. So what was weird is Newport is an industrial type town. There's factories there's all kinds of stuff, but there's this little side road that comes off a bridge, and as soon as you hit that side road, you feel like you're up in the mountains. It's completely surrounded with trees. It's a very small, like lane and a half type road, very secluded. You can't hear the city. You can't see the city on that stretch. Okay. Now, the people that are proponents of the dogman theory are going to look at that and say, well, it's a perfect area. They're traveling the rivers, which is suspected that they do. This was an area like a greenway where they can offshoot from the city and go through and scavenge at people's yards and look for animals and stuff. And I understand that. But you have to look at the evidence that is there as opposed to the evidence that's not there, like we were talking about, negative evidence. All the evidence points to these dogs got loose and attacked these people. Dogs were sighted at the scene licking the wounds. The gentleman in question fled the area with his dogs, went to, I believe it was an ex's house with an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, I'm not sure. One of the dogs perished and he buried them. When the officers finally tracked him down, they took DNA samplings from the dogs, including the deceased one. The last I looked, DNA results were not released, or there has been no further report since that time, and I've been looking for it. But all the evidence shows that without being able to pronounce this guy guilty, it was more than likely this pack of dogs. And that's what we have to go with. We can't just say this was a horrible animal attack, it was canine, therefore it must be dogman. And that killed. Even now, there's still people out there going, oh, these dogman attacks in Cott County, they're horrible, and the government's trying to cover it up, and yada, yada, yada. There's zero evidence for that. Zero. It's all 100% speculation.
It's the same thing with any time a hiker goes missing. There's
Sure.
always a Bigfoot got him. A Bigfoot got him. but they don't follow the report up later on and find out, well, they found the guy, he fell off of a cliff and died,
Sure.
or or a cougar ate him or something like that. It's they
Sure.
automatically go to the cryptid,
Hmm.
and which we know from reports that Dogman in general is thought to be more aggressive
Sure.
than Bigfoot and a more aggressive type cryptid. But I've also heard reports of them not being aggressive as well. But in this case here, would it makes more sense that a pack of dogs done, and these dogs you're speaking of, they are very, very large dogs. Uh, people should
Absolutely.
people should Google it if they don't know what they are. They're humongous.
Yep.
The pit bull's
They are
nothing to sniff
very
at.
capable of the damage described, especially as a pack of them.
Oh
I've
yeah,
heard things like, oh, a dog couldn't, partially tear the arm off of a person. And I'm going, have you never seen two dogs play tug of war with the rope?
yeah.
Imagine a 150-pound dog, two of them playing tug of war with a person. As morbid as that sounds,
Hmm.
that is not beyond the possibility.
As far as you know, this
And
case is still open though. They're still investigating
as
it,
far as
supposedly.
I know, yep, I have not heard anything other. There's been no reports of it. If it has been closed, it's been done very quietly. And I would assume just due to respect to the family and the hype that's gone around it, I don't want to downplay that. My heart goes out to the families of these people.
Hmm.
Just an absolutely horrible, horrible experience to have to go through as a family member. But if it's closed, it hasn't been announced. If there's any new updates, it hasn't been brought out, in the newspapers or any articles or anything. But again, that's people point to the lack of media coverage as part of the cover up.
Right. Well, now you know as well as I do that just like in a pit bull attack, if I own a pit bull and it gets out and attacks someone and kills them, I'm liable for that. So that man, if that was
Absolutely.
his dogs, he would be in bad trouble for this. So he'll
Yep.
probably face jail time, and maybe they're keeping it kind of quiet to get everything all together so they can get him and he don't flee or whatever. Sometimes I guess that could be
So
part of it.
the last report that I read, it made it sound like they had him in custody. So I don't know what came of that. I don't know if they had some other charges they could bring to hold him. I have no idea. It'd be pure speculation. But I know in that report he was taken into custody for some reason. So hopefully they're able to kind of figure out what's going on and justice will be served.
Now we had about I guess 2 or 3 years ago we had a guy who had went to jail but somebody had let his pit bulls out. He had his pit bulls pinned up, and he'd actually attacked two people. The two pit bulls attacked two people, killing one of them and really injuring the other one. But the guy got
Sure.
in trouble for it. So
Hmm.
uh,
Absolutely.
think that a dog cannot kill or maim or tear off limbs. I mean, they can. They're strong, especially if you
Absolutely.
get a large dog. Something over 100 pound. Uh,
Hmm.
some dogs I've seen some dogs weigh close to 200 pounds.
Sure.
Especially we used to do a lot of hunting, and I've seen some big walker dogs that go 125, 150 pounds. I've seen some that's bigger.
Hmm.
So them strong dogs. We're still those hunting dogs like are normally not aggressive towards humans, but
Right.
if they wanted to be,
Sure.
you
The
didn't have some
power
kind of
is
weapon,
there.
you couldn't get them off of you.
Exactly.
I keep small dogs. If they wish to get out of line, I can put a foot to them or get them off of me, which they mind fairly well. One of them's kind of grouchy, but you get a big dog if it decides to attack you, you better have something to get it off of you because it can hurt you.
Absolutely. Hey, especially if you have three of them. I mean,
Right.
the very little you can do in that kind of scenario. Very little.
But when these people were attacked, do you know what they were doing? Was they out running or walking or jogging or something like that? Or
So that was not disclosed. The attacks did happen at night in the neighborhood. So the question was, what were these people doing out there at night? But I mean, they have every right to be wherever they want to be. They could have been
sure.
taking an evening stroll, could have been visiting neighbors. I mean,
Yeah.
like there was no specifics as to what they were doing in that neighborhood at that time of night.
I remember seeing the original article on that when the first attack happened or second one, one to
Hmm.
the other. I seen but after that I never could find any information on it. But I knew
Yeah,
that
the
you were
only thing I could
looking into
find
it.
was two specific articles were the only ones that I could find.
Then you had to go locally to find any more information. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
No.
Yep.
Okay.
Like I said, I talked to family members. I went to the area itself. I've talked to local law enforcement officers, but they just say they don't know anything really about it. It wouldn't be under their jurisdiction, or it's not their case, so they wouldn't know different things like that.
Well, talking about dogmen, I personally feel like there's way more Bigfoot sightings than there are dogman sightings.
Sure.
Well, that would lead me to believe that possibly the population of dogmen is considerably less than Bigfoot. Would you think so? How would you think the population of dogmen is?
It's hard to say because we don't know the type of reports, the amount of reports that are actually coming out, right? I know they say that only 10% of the population has a Bigfoot sighting, but only 1% of those are actually reported,
Right.
is kind of the general number that they throw out there. Well, how many people are going to admit that they saw a werewolf?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the way I see it, there's I even feel the same way with Bigfoot. There's really no true way to get a population estimate. There really isn't. All
No.
we can do is speculate, and we know. I mean, science says there has to be a breeding population if we're going to see them over time like that. They can't be so small that they can't breed and produce viable offspring. But even in the Bigfoot world, there's talk about inbreeding, and so we have things like the three toes and different things like that. And so that shows right there there's not a massive population, at least in those regions. So I mean, I wouldn't even begin to speculate. I know there has to be a breeding population, just given the variety of animals that have been seen. There has been sightings of pups. There's been sightings of ones that were described as older because they're gray and muzzled. There's a few habituation reports out there that talk about, finding a cub and interacting with it until it's a full grown adult. So there's definitely has to be a large enough population for breeding, but to put a number on it or even regional numbers, I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess. I'm
Well,
not
I
that
know.
smart.
Well, I know here in my area when it comes to Bigfoot, there's been a very large increase in population in Bigfoot because of I can tell by the tracks I'm finding. Uh,
Sure.
and plus we have less mining, less logging, which logging has come back into the area pretty heavy. So I would assume that Dogman is also intelligent, probably similar to Bigfoot. So they know
That's the
how to
idea. Yep.
avoid areas, and they know when like machinery or hunters or things, guns and things like that are in the area.
Hmm.
So they know how to avoid that. And maybe that's why they move to other areas. But from what I can gather, I would assume that there's probably less Dogman than Bigfoot, and that possibly Dogman is more reclusive than Bigfoot. That Bigfoot's more of a, I guess, a has more social
Sure.
interaction with people than the Dogman would.
I would say, given the information that we have and the reports that have come through, I would say that is safe assumptions for sure.
And there's been an increase over the years, over the last, say, 8, 10, 12 years of reports of dogmen. Used to,
Yep.
you didn't hear people publicly, file
Hmm.
reports about dogmen, but now it's pretty common. Uh, there wasn't many groups on Facebook just a few years ago really about dogmen, just one or two,
Right.
and now there's quite a few more. So
Sure.
maybe
Well,
people
what I'm
seen them
finding
before.
a lot of is a lot of historical reports are starting to come out now, from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's not so much that there's a lot of people say, well, there's more reports now. Dogman's a new thing, you know. But what it is people are more comfortable coming out and talking about this now.
Same way
And
with Bigfoot.
so, same thing with Bigfoot, exactly. I'm finding a lot of the Dogman reports that are coming out are from 15, 20, 30 years ago. And there's a lot of really good detail and a lot of really good stuff going on there. In fact, I find those ones to be more believable in their interactions.
Mm.
A lot of the ones that I hear that are more modern sightings have that flair of the fantastical to them. You know what I mean? There's that
Yeah,
little bit extra, that little bit of embellishment where I
yeah.
have to kind of go, that might be an add-on to the story, you know?
Well,
Um,
we know people sort of add to sometime, and then as
well,
it gets
sure,
told over and over, it seems like the details might change a little bit, but your base is still, there.
right,
But some of the
sure,
fine details may change or get lost or added to. That's just part
sure.
of. I guess that happens in all societies to some degree,
Yeah,
and
it's
all
just the nature of
stories.
storytelling and folklore.
Yeah. Do you have any? Somebody asked your generalizations about dogman sightings, other than maybe them being a little more aggressive. About the only thing that's I find that's really kind of
Well,
general, and that ain't always true.
sure, sure. So what I have found, what it seems like, is the dogmen are not necessarily interested in attacking and killing people. Okay. Most of the reports have the dogmen doing things to instill fear in people, almost as if it's a game, or if somehow they feed off of the fear energy. I know that's a hugely popular idea right now, is that they go out of their way to incite fear, but they stop from actually attacking you as a person. But on that same note, I say, well, if they attack you, you're probably not going to be able to tell your story,
Yeah.
right? So, but that seems to be, there's a lot of cases of that where they'll push you to a point. They'll stalk you, they'll chase you, repetitively, they'll get into your house, they'll do all these different things, but they hold back from actually harming you. And I find that a very interesting note to all these stories. That's one of the common threads.
Have you heard any
Um,
reports of like Dogman doing kind of like Bigfoot, throwing rocks or pine cones or anything like? I've not heard any. I can't recall any reports of that type of behavior from Dogman.
I have not heard of that. And there might be a reason for that, though. The majority of the dogman sightings that have enough detail to them report that their hands, they're more like raccoon hands. Their top paws, I would say, their hands. They're shaped more like large raccoon hands, with large black fingernail claws as opposed to canine claws or actual fingernails, kind of a combination in between. And I haven't heard many reports of the dexterity of their upper body other than being able to grasp a fence to go over a fence or to manipulate certain things like that. Um, Possibly manipulating certain types of door handles depending on what they are, different things like that. So that might just be a case of physical inability to throw stuff like that, where Bigfoot with a primate with very human-like hands,
Yeah.
and a very human-like upper body structure would have more of the ability to throw things like that. And as I understand it, very accurately.
Well, that's a good point. There is that uh, sometimes people want to say that Bigfoot has claws, but it's really they don't. Their hands are like ours, like a human. They
Mm-hmm.
have a nail. They may have a longer nail or something, but
Sure.
then you talk
Well,
about the dog man would have more of the claws. So maybe people
absolutely.
are misinterpreting some of the data there and
Well,
attributing
I
it to
mean,
Bigfoot.
how many people in our country have ever seen somebody that has never cut their nails in their entire life? Right?
Very few.
So, I mean, the indigenous tribe that I grew up with, the Maku tribe, they didn't cut their nails. They wore off naturally, they broke down naturally, but their nails were so sharp, they would use their thumbnail for gutting and cleaning fish.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Guy asked a
Right?
question there. Guy asked a question there about feeding off of human fear. And my thing on that would be, it's not that they absorb the energy; it's that it probably gives them an adrenaline rush or something like that to strike fear into people. That would be
Sure.
my take on it.
That would be the natural analytic side of it. I mean, when you look at these, I look at all possibilities. I even when it comes to the Bigfoot, I'm not going to yay or nay anything because I'm just an observer, right? And so I'll consider all possibilities without saying, yeah, I believe this, but I can say I've thought about that and I've considered it. And it's kind of the same thing here. There are those camps out there that believe the dog man is more of a demonic type creature, more of a spiritual entity that is able to take a flesh form, and it literally feeds off the negative energy or fear energy. That is one camp. Other people that are more into this is just a creature entity, believe, like you said, it's fun and games. They're taunting, they're teasing, they're seeing how far they can go. And that's been exhibited in nature as well. So I can't say one is right and one is wrong more than the other.
Well, that's like paranormal. We know that in the paranormal ghost hunting realm
mm-hmm.
that they will feed out ghosts to feed off of energies, positive
Right.
and negative. We know that. So if you take the side of that these animals are a spiritual type entity or something like that, yeah, maybe that is true. But I think about dogs in general.
Mm-hmm.
I got two dogs, and I see their energy levels ramp up when they're playing. When
Sure.
one's chasing the other, and I mean their energy levels really spike, their eyes dilate. So it could be something similar to that way if you're in the flesh and blood
Absolutely.
type thing, or the other. I
Absolutely.
guess it depends on which camp you're in on that, I suppose.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, I got
Now,
another topic here.
oh, go ahead.
If you want to get into it, uh, it's another topic that I don't know a whole lot about. I know some about is the Mothman. Without a doubt, you've probably
Oh,
studied
sure.
it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me your thoughts on the Mothman. What's it mean when people see it? I know some say it's an omen. What do you think?
Well, that's interesting because Mothman is region specific to West Virginia. Very
Really?
specific attributes to the Mothman as far as what it looked like and how it moved and everything. There are a lot of winged humanoid type sightings around the world.
Yes.
Very few of them are specific and close encounters like the West Virginia Mothman. So I tend to believe that it is a type of entity, and I use the word entity because I don't know physical or any other, what it is. I believe there's more than one. I believe that it's, again, like a dogman or a Bigfoot. There is a type of creature out there, entities that are these winged humanoid type creatures. I've heard reports of from Mexico and Central America. Is
Chicago's a
big.
hot spot.
Right. I mean, Chicago's been having hot spot sightings for the past several years.
Mm-hmm.
Even over into Milwaukee, over to Ohio, the whole Midwest region. But they're calling it winged humanoid because very few of the sightings are close enough or have detail enough to really be able to compare it to the West Virginia Mothman. All right. But the same type of creatures, if we just generally classify them, the winged humanoids, are seen all over the world. Could this have been, just a one-off creature that happened to be in that area for that time frame? Absolutely. A lot of people believe that the sighting of Mothman is a harbinger of doom, given the Silver Bridge collapse that happened just recently after the sightings. I can understand that correlation because you have strange events and then a huge, huge disaster that affected the community. People are going to naturally put those together.
Right.
But there's been, like you said, in Chicago, all kinds of sightings of a creature very similar without any of the disaster showing up. I think that's one of those hindsight things, right? Where, oh, this happened, and before that we saw this, so we're going to connect the two, as opposed to we can literally go, oh, we saw this creature, therefore we know something's going to happen, because that hasn't been shown any evidence of that whatsoever.
That's just human nature, I think, to try to connect the dots on that type
Sure,
of stuff.
sure. It's human nature to try and understand.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense
sometimes
to
we're
me.
willing to make some very far-fetched assumptions that try and understand something.
Those dots are a long ways away, and we still connect them sometimes
Yes,
when they really don't do
yes,
that. Have
absolutely.
you been to the Mothman Festival?
I have not. That is definitely on my bucket
It's
list
on my
now that I'm in
list
this
too.
region to go do. I
It's been
definitely
on
want to get
mine for
up
the
there
last two
and
or three
talk to the
years.
people. Yep.
I've been wanting to go there. We actually planned it one time, but something come up. I mean, I think for me it's about a 5 hour drive or something like that. I can't remember exactly,
Yeah, it's
but
a bit of a haul. Bit of a haul.
we planned it one year on my wife's vacation time, and then something came in and we didn't get to go. So, and then now with well, the first couple of years of we've had COVID the last couple of years, and for a while you couldn't go anywhere and couldn't do anything, and they still don't like for you to go anywhere and do anything now, but
Sure.
you do what we do. Somebody asked a
Hmm.
question about the Loch Ness monster. Uh,
Loch Ness, one of the classics, right?
yeah, that's one that's been around a long time.
Long time. That one's really interesting. Um, I've talked to people that have gone on expeditions to the Loch Ness. We've all seen the documentaries.
Oh yeah,
Nothing is ever found. To me, that's one of those really fun ones. Yes, something could be there. Maybe nothing's there. Who knows?
yeah.
It's a fun local legend. Um, just a really fun thing,
They used to have the
you
live
know?
cam too that ran all the time over.
Sure.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it's still
I've,
up
I've
or
been
not.
known to watch that every now and then. I don't know if it is or not, but
I used to watch it some. Yeah,
um, I find it fascinating looking at the historical reports. You have some reports that say it goes up on land and it can move around on land very well. There's a very famous sighting where it crossed the road in front of the car and it had a sheep in its mouth. Um, like what do you attest that to? What can you say that is?
right.
There's all kinds of theories out there. The two most popular ones are being a long neck seal, which in and of itself is completely speculative because there's no such thing as a long neck seal according to science. So to me, long neck seal, dinosaur, one and the same. Um, Giant conger eels have been put forth. Um, it's another one of those things. So if it has been seen as long as it has, either the creature is extremely long lived, possibility,
Yeah.
or there's some sort of breeding population. Those are your
Speaking
only.
speaking of lifespan, would you
Mhm.
care to speculate on Bigfoot lifespan and Dogman lifespan, that type of thing? What do you think? Any idea? Of
So,
course, we know
judging
it's a
by the
guess, but
few it's a guess, but judging by the few stories that I have heard of people having long-term encounters with Bigfoot, it seems to be somewhere between the 60 to 80 year mark. So very similar to humans. Um, and again, pure speculation, no idea. It could be more
yeah.
than that or less than that, but that's kind of um, talking to some people that have had those kind of experiences. That seems to be the general idea. Dogmen, who knows? I mean,
Right. Well, I know there's one area in particular where they had a white Bigfoot sighting, and I know
uh-huh.
that sighting went on for probably just in that area, probably went on 50 or 60 years I know of. And
Yep,
I don't know,
yep,
I've not heard no reports in the last few years from there, but I know it was like in the 40s or something, and then people seen the same thing all the way up into the 80s.
sure,
So, and it's been a while since I've heard a report from that area. I've heard of other Bigfoot report, but not the white one specifically from that
right,
area. They actually gave it a
yeah,
name. They called it Caleb for some reason. I
yep,
don't know why. Just gave it a name. That's some
sure.
people do, I guess, give it a name.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Lauren Coleman, in some of his books, he classifies Bigfoot a little bit differently as far as into groups and subspecies and stuff. One of the groups he has, he's called the marked hominids. Marked meaning they have some sort of color feature to them. The famous one is Old Yellow Top.
Yeah.
I forgot what region he is in, but
Okay.
same thing, right? He's got an identifying trait where you can say, hey, that's the same one being seen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, and those are the cases where you can start looking at time spans, right? Because even if it's a genetic issue and it's being passed on to offspring, the chances of the markings being identical is very slim, you
Yeah.
know. So, or like so with the white Bigfoot, the white ones I find interesting because I've heard the theory that it's albinism. They're born white Bigfoot, But I've also heard reports of it being elderly Bigfoot. I've heard it
Yeah,
told both ways,
both ways.
and it might be both ways,
I
right?
think it is. I think
Um,
it is.
there was a great series of reports I read out of Florida where this gentleman claimed to have a small family group living on his property, and the one he identified as the mother-in-law was a white, light-skinned creature.
Hmm.
And the reason he called the mother-in-law is because apparently the features resembled more of the female
Okay.
than the male, and
Not
yeah,
actually
like
real
there was a
mother-in-law.
family clan. Yeah, it was a real mother-in-law. It was great. So essentially, the clan consisted of the oldest one, and then a male and female and an offspring, and they were regulars to his properties to the point where he could see them and have a little bit of habituation interactions with them. But that one was reported to be quite elderly and had to be taken care of by the other ones. Then you get some reports. I read another report of a different area of Florida of one that was known to raid the trash cans in the area, and it was reported to be the size of like a big alpha male, and it was pure white. And so it goes to that speculation of, is it an age thing? Is it um, a coloration thing, or is it possibly both? And I think it could possibly be both. I
I
don't
think
see
it is,
why it
maybe.
wouldn't be.
I did an
Yep.
interview, and it's actually on our YouTube channel, of a guy who, when he was younger and hunting, he had a white Bigfoot. He was squirrel hunting. He had a white Bigfoot come close, and it smacks a tree and everything on him. And I know the guy real well, good guy. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it was white. And then I've seen a few pictures that are credible, that I think are real, where the
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot almost had gray hair, kind of like you have in your beard, because of its
Sure.
age.
It's a good
Because of
color.
its age, as you get older, yeah. I mean, this happens to all of us. I got a whole bunch too.
Sure.
It just hit. But
Yep.
I think that you have some that's born just like us, blonde hair, and you have some that's black. Now
Yep.
here in our area, our predominant color is black, but I have had the white ones, red ones, and brown ones also reported, but
Sure.
mostly black. And the ones I
Mm-hmm.
have seen personally have been jet black. I mean, unreal dark.
Sure.
Well, I guess a bear
I
is
think
kind of comparable to color, but
right, and we all know, if you know anything about black bears, they come from blonde
right,
to almost purple. They're so
yeah,
deep in black, right? I mean, cinnamon colored and auburn and everything in between.
yeah. So I think I'm
Yeah,
like you. I think it's a combination of
sure.
age. Maybe some of them are, you see that's got white is because they're old. At what
Hmm.
age they start getting white hair, who knows? I guess it's according to how their mother-in-law and their spouse is.
An interesting note with the white Bigfoot, most people think the Yeti is white,
Yes, they do.
but the majority of the reports of Yetis in the Himalayas are dark colored creatures. They're not white. That's just the media hype in the movies because of
Mm.
the snowy mountains and everything. They created a white creature, but most of the reports are not. In fact, I think I've only heard of one that called it white, and I'm very skeptical of that particular report because they said it was white, and a few other things involved in it, But it's a very rare coloration. Um, very few reports, statistically speaking, are of a white-colored Bigfoot.
We get a Yeti. Uh, we get a few, like I say, around here are white ones, but like I say, mostly black. My
Hmm.
next little topic I got here on my list, I want to talk to you about, and we're pushing close to out of time. We got about 10 minutes left. Is
Yep.
UFOs and aliens. Not necessarily how they
Okay.
pertain to Bigfoot, but just your thoughts in general on UFO phenomenon and alien phenomenon.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to go a little off base here with it. I am a born again believer. I'm a Bible believing Christian.
Sure.
But I believe there is a lot that happens in this world that is not in the Bible, but it all pertains to the same big picture. Okay, we'll lay it out that way. It is my personal belief, and it's belief. I don't have facts to this. I don't have a lot of evidence to it. My personal belief that what we are referring to as aliens and all that kind of stuff,
I know
I
where you're going.
believe they are part of the demonic world, the anti-Christian, anti-Christ world. Um, Again, personal belief. A lot of people are like, no, these are legitimate. They're space travelers. I personally believe that this has something to do with what the Bible refers to as the Great Deception. I believe a big part of the government coming out and admitting that they're UFOs is just one of those steps leading up to those biblical end times. And all that's going to come out. And I firmly believe it's all from that demonic realm.
Well, I'm glad to finally run into somebody who sees it the same way I do. I think
I do.
I think they're out there. They're what you're seeing is real.
Absolutely.
But it's part of the end time great deception that's going to fool almost everybody. Does that mean there's not life on other planets? I don't know about that. There's a lot of planets out there we don't know nothing about. So possibly there's life on other planets. But I think that, like you, the majority of what we consider alien and UFO stuff is actually really would be the fallen angels and demonic thing that happens in the end time. But you say that kind of stuff and people think we're crazy, but that's okay.
That's okay. I'm okay with it. Yeah. Like I said, I will talk about anything and everything. I don't care. I am who I am, and I have my beliefs. And in that same line, one of the things that I'm struggling with right now and talking with people about is this idea that Bigfoot and Dogmen are Nephilim from the Bible. And I think that's become a buzz phrase. I think that's become a catch-all. And it's generally said by people that don't have an understanding of what the term Nephilim really refers to.
Correct.
And the history behind that and what it really means.
I tackle that subject.
Drives me nuts.
I tackle that subject in my book. There's like 3 or 4 different theories of Bigfoot that come from the Bible.
Yep.
There's several of them. I discuss that in my book and even the fallen angels to some degree.
Sure.
I offer my opinion on it in my book and cover the basics of the theories or hypothesis or whatever you want to call it of the story. But I'm like you. I think that's to become kind of the go-to thing because it helps explain the unexplainable things that people say they do. Which
it's a new cool kid thing.
And if maybe they have special abilities that I'm not aware of, but in almost 30 years of research, I've not seen anything that I thought was.
Here's my thoughts on that, Thomas. Is I have coined the phrase, and the idea of what I call the electric eel effect. Okay, and this again comes from my roots growing up in South America. In the jungle, we had electric eels. In fact, I remember skin diving one time with my family. We were out on a little mini vacation at the river, and my brother shot one with a spear gun in the head, right? So these were part of our life down in the jungle. Now imagine, if you will, 200 years ago, somebody's exploring in the jungle, and they come across this eel in the river, so they know what an eel is, but it has this amazing thing where it hurts you without touching you. It has the ability to kill animals and small fish that swim near it, but it doesn't actually ever touch anything. And you go out and try and catch it, and it hurts you physically. Right. You can't even touch the water that it's in. But you have zero concept of what electricity is. Zero concept, like no idea of anything like that even possibly existing. How do you explain the electric eel at that point if you're that person?
Right.
It's going to have magical supernatural abilities and powers. There's no way to explain it because you don't have that reference.
Right. It's like
I personally feel it's I personally feel that's the exact same thing that we're going to discover with Bigfoot, with Dogmen, with almost everything that's going to be considered Fortean or paranormal. I believe that it is all scientifically possible. We just don't have the knowledge yet.
Well, one example I like to use sometimes is, can you imagine the guy that first saw a platypus?
Right.
He goes back to the village and he tells them about it. They probably think the guy's crazy. You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same type of thing. It's something we don't understand.
Sure. I'm a big fan of Ron Moorhead. I'm sure you know who Ron is.
Sure.
For those of you who don't know, he is the progenitor of the Sierra Sounds. He was the one that was behind the recordings of the Sierra Sounds and the consequent investigation and bringing in um, the linguist that did all that. And I got to meet Ron recently here, which was totally exciting for me. Jennifer can attest to that. I was totally geeking out on it. And he starts applying quantum theory, which is a valid science, to the idea of Bigfoot as a way to kind of explain some of these things. And I think that's what we need to do to kind of stretch and get an understanding of some of these things out there that's happening, because things are happening with Bigfoot that we can't understand because we don't have that knowledge yet. So we need to kind of keep searching for the knowledge. Now, I'm not saying quantum physics is the answer, right? But it is an avenue that has to be explored the more we understand quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
I believe in, and I call it vibrational theory, and I know that's probably not the right phrasing, but I'm not a scientist, so I don't care. And I've actually been in serious debates with people over this. It is proven scientific fact that everything has a vibrational frequency.
Correct.
Right? Humans have a specific range, rocks have a range, plants have a range. The table my phone is sitting on has a vibrational frequency. Every single thing does. Right? Proven fact that we can only observe things within a certain frequency range, whether it be sound, whether it be visual. Our perceptions as humans are attuned to a very specific, small frequency range.
Very
right?
small.
So what happens if something exists above or below our range? We can't physically perceive it.
No.
We can't.
Nope.
Right?
Like in ghost hunting, we have to use equipment to detect certain sounds.
Exactly.
Lights, that type of thing.
So what if we speculate that maybe a Bigfoot creature lives in a vibrational range that overlaps ours, but maybe extends past it on both sides or on one side or the other? Right? So we just don't know. And so I don't totally discount some of these fantastical things that we hear, like Bigfoot shimmering and disappearing, or the whole cloaking thing, right? Yeah, it's very fantastical. Absolutely it is. But we don't know anything about these creatures, right? We know, like when I'm watching a hummingbird, I can't see its wings flap. To use a very simple, concept of it. What if these creatures are able to adjust their frequency, their vibration based on certain stimulus, fear, anger, whatever? You know what I mean? So, I mean, we have to consider some of these other fantastical possibilities, but not attribute it to paranormal. They're stepping in and out of portals. They're you know what I mean? Like all these different things, which again, I'm not going to say is not a possibility, because if you look at quantum physics, portals are a very real possibility. They're still theory, right? We don't have fact and science that says they are real. They're theoretical. And the more reports that I hear about some of this stuff, and the people I hear some of these reports from, very, very credible researchers and witnesses. Right? So I think we have to keep our minds open, and that's where I call it the electric eel effect, because we just don't know. We don't have that understanding yet. We're starting to gain an understanding of how vibrations work and how energy works in the world. They're developing weapons using different types of vibrations. They're doing different things like that with it. We're understanding more how ultra low frequencies are used in the animal world with tigers and turkeys and elephants and all these different things, right? So I think we need to at least keep our minds open to some of these possibilities, but not attribute it as like it's some kind of crazy super magic being. And I think that's what's happening. We're getting observable data, but because we don't understand it, we're just like the old European people with werewolves. We don't understand what we're seeing, so we're building this whole mythos around them, these magical powers, this ability to create portals and jump through them and all these kinds of things. as opposed to just keeping it a little more on the simplistic and side that we know a little bit of science about, you know?
One thing that kind of bothers me about the whole magical part is that I've noticed that
Mm-hmm.
some groups and some people are attributing godlike abilities to Bigfoot, and
Mm-hmm.
almost really they're kind of making them into something that as a deity that they can heal people and
Yeah,
they can do this and that. And I think that's
absolutely.
taking it too far. In my opinion, I
I
think it's taking
agree.
it too far. I think the
I
key
agree.
to Bigfoot is the hair. I have a few hair samples, and no, I've not sent them in
Yep.
because it does absolutely no good. They don't
No
have they
good.
don't have a sample to compare it to. All I can do is tell you
Sure.
what it's not. Uh,
Yep.
I think the key is their hair, and I think that changes. It's totally opinion. I think it changes from when they're young as they get older to a mature age. I think that hair changes just like it does in most animals. Uh, the
Sure.
one hair that I have is very translucent. I liken it into a polar bear hair,
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Absolutely.
clear that light to pass through. You get this thing in the right area, it's going to be very difficult to see. Uh,
Absolutely.
I think some of the special abilities that are attributed to Bigfoot is due to the fact that Bigfoot is so uh, fast and it moves
Yep.
so silky smooth. I mean, you just if you've never seen one actually move, it's hard for me to explain it because it's so fluid. It's just unreal to watch one of them move, and even if it's just for a brief few seconds, they're
Mm-hmm.
not big clumsy ogres running through the mountains, knocking trees over and things like that. They're really
Right.
fleet of foot. Uh, and some, like you say, some stories get they take it too far. Uh,
Right.
and some people are credible, and I find I try to take all of them, fairly seriously. But some stuff just goes beyond what my mind can take, and I've had a few sightings, and I've been out amongst Bigfoot several times, close
Yep.
proximity, and I've never had anything that I would attribute to be supernatural from them. Uh,
Right.
I don't mean I'm not the be all end all on that. Other people's had different
But it's
experiences,
your
but
experience. It's your
my
facts. Yep.
experience, I've not seen them fly through the air. I've not seen them turn into a tree or turn into a buffalo and people say stuff like this. People say they manifest
People
into
say that.
trees
Yep.
and they turn into
Yep.
turtles and stuff like that. And I've not seen anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. Uh,
No, I
Maybe that's
will say
my mind
this.
trying to explain it. I don't know.
I have seen a video personally, captured on closed circuit security camera outside of a house. And I can't explain it and I won't explain it. I will just tell you what I saw on the video. It started off with a creature on a front porch eating dog food out of the dog bowl dish. As it explained to me, this is what was happening. I could see the dark shape. I could see the movement. I could see reaching and bringing brought back. Um, and I could see size comparison to the porch that it was on. And it was explained to me this was a juvenile Bigfoot eating the dog food, as many reports out there of Bigfoot eating dog
Sure.
food and sweet
Yeah.
feet from the horses. In the background were a couple of shapes walking back and forth. One of them was lighter colored, one of them was darker. And these were explained to me as other Bigfoot doing different things in the background. But there was a very bright light in the background. This was at night. This was taken at night, so the bright light kind of took over the whole back end area. And there were times where you could see one of the creatures or whatever it was, the large shadow, walk into the light, and the light would flare, and it would go back down again. And then a few seconds later, it would flare again, and then a creature would come back out of it. I don't even try and explain it. I just know the video was shown to me, and I saw the video. Um, it was fascinating. I was shown daytime shots from the same camera, and you could see the porch, you could see the buildings in the background, and the rest of it was all woods. I mean, could that possibly have been a hoax thing? Absolutely, it could have been. But I can't say it was. I can't say it wasn't. I just know I found the video very intriguing, and it was being put forth as evidence of, portals and all this kind of stuff with it. So it was an intriguing video, and I always keep an open mind. You just don't know
That's
what
right.
was going on with it. You know, you
That's
just don't
something I
know.
would like to see firsthand. You know,
Sure.
like you say, you don't, even though you know a person very well, you don't really maybe know what they're capable of doing, like we was talking about earlier. You
Sure.
know, but that's
Absolutely.
something I would like to see firsthand. But people ask me a lot of times about the portals and all that kind of stuff, and I've not. That's not been my experience. I've not experienced that. I doubt they have
Well,
any
very,
kind of
very few people have. Very
special
few people
abilities.
have.
Uh,
Hmm.
but you know, there's a lot of stories out there about it. You can't just
Yep.
blanketly dismiss everything. But it's just not been my experience. So I try not to talk a whole lot, a
Right.
whole lot about it. You know,
Well,
but it's not been
it's
my
like I was
experience.
talking with some guys on another podcast, right? They asked, what are the facts of Bigfoot, right? And I said, well, Bigfoot is really an interesting subject because the facts differ from person to person.
Depending on who you talk to.
Exactly, right? So you have your facts. Your facts and Bigfoot are what you have experienced. Those are facts, right? All of my stuff is speculation based on reports and talking to people like you and other researchers. Those aren't really facts as a fact is defined. That is anecdotal evidence and then my interpretation of what I'm hearing and understanding.
Mhm.
That's not a fact, right? But for somebody experiencing something fantastical, um, to them, that's their fact of what happened with Bigfoot. That's their fact of Bigfoot. But we don't know if it's real or not for us. You see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
really hard. It's really
Well,
hard to pinpoint that
experience is
down.
a good teacher. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, once you if you've experienced something, it's different.
right.
But what I run into a lot, and I know you've seen it too, people will post up foliage, picture of foliage zoomed in,
Oh,
light and
mm,
shadow, and they'll fight you. They would, if they was in a room with you, they would fight you, trying to tell you that's a Bigfoot. And when
yep.
we know it's foliage and light and shadow, so all
It
evidence,
kills
I
me.
guess,
I
is
just, oh,
interpretive. Yeah, it's, each individual, I
yeah.
guess, has to interpret what they
I
see.
just tell people, look, I just don't see pictures very well because I mean, you get some people that say, "Wow, look at that picture. There's a Bigfoot, and it's this, and it has a bone through its nose, and there's a feather." And I'm going,
Yeah,
"Wow," because all I see is black shadow fuzz with maybe
yeah,
a
I know.
light spot. Like, wow, your eyes must be really good. And that was a literal conversation I had with somebody one time. There was
Oh
a
yeah,
supposed picture of a Bigfoot up in a palm tree in South or Louisiana, and they're like, "Do you see the bone going through its nose? It proves it has culture and art." And I'm going, I'm sorry, I see a squirrel's nest. I literally don't see anything. But then I have to go, it's not that I don't believe you. It's literally that I don't see it, so I can't even comment on it, you know?
well, you do have to tread lightly on for people like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes what people don't understand, people like me who do this a lot, I take it seriously. And when I see, when you keep seeing what I would call foolish stuff over and over and over and over and over, sometimes it gets
Hmm.
frustrating for me because
It does.
here I am putting a lot of money, time, and effort. I'm wearing my body out. I'm going up and down the mountains. I put myself in danger of snakes, bears, cougars, you know, and here you are going out in your backyard taking a picture of a tree that there's nothing around it, nothing in it, and you're zooming it in 2,000 times, blurring it and putting lines on it, and you're saying it's a Bigfoot. And it just
Yep.
sometimes it gets frustrating for people like me, and I know
Absolutely.
others feel that way, at times.
Yeah.
But I'm getting better. My filter's working better. I'm trying not to comment on those things and
Yeah.
move
One of
on.
my biggest frustrations is when people ask me, how do you know that? And I go, well, let me see. I'm 40 years old now. I have been researching the subject for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
I cannot give you a citation list of what brought me to this conclusion. Or the big one now is post a link. Post a link to that. And it's like, well, when I
Yeah.
started researching, there was no such thing as links.
Yeah.
And there is no data that I can link to that tells you this, you know? And I'm
Yeah.
upfront with that with everybody. Like, this is just what I have gathered over the years. I've talked to this, you know, but people will say, well, if you can't show me a link as if that's proof of
Yeah.
something, you know, like show me where this is coming from other than you. And it's like, do you understand the subject we're even talking about here? Because, you know, everything is only coming from a person, you
Well, that's the
know,
thing
and that just
with
drives
any
me nuts.
subject. With any subject, you can go on the internet and find pros and cons for any subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I got to move my camera here. My phone's dying. There
Oh,
we go.
oh well, we're about ready to close out. So I mean, we've got our 2 hours in,
Sure.
anyways. But before we go, tell us where people can see you at on the internet or
Sure.
whatever, where you're going to be speaking at, and what you got planned for this year.
Absolutely. So basically, the easiest way to find me is on Facebook. Just look me up, Justin Decker. Look for the guy with the bandana. I think my current picture is actually the same bandana. This year, I've only have one scheduled event right now for sure, and that's the ECBRO out in Virginia, West Virginia, one of the two Virginias. I'm not sure. With Daniel Benoit, he's putting on his event there. I'm a listed speaker there. I've been asked to speak at the Eastern Cryptid conference they got coming up in August. It's the first time this one has been up. A local group out of Morristown is putting on. They got Turtle Man showing up and all kinds of different people. They got some of the guys from Duck Dynasty coming over, Lizard Lick Towing. So they're kind of putting a whole bunch of fun Southern spin on everything. With it being a cryptid conference, I've been asked to speak at that. I'm not sure if my schedule is going to allow it or not. I'm definitely going to look at that. I am becoming more involved with the YouTube channel called the Band of Bigfoot Brethren. They have a couple of different podcasts there. Jeremiah Fountain is in charge of that one. I am on the Skookum Sessions, which is a roundtable discussion. We generally have about 5 or 6 guys at a time, just kind of doing a roundtable thing. We'll have guests on. And basically, Jeremiah is the host, and he just kind of throws out questions. Hey, guys, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? We all have kind of differing opinions, so it's a really fun kind of general knowledge. Not always family friendly, so I'll put that out there. It is kind of, a bunch of guys hanging around talking shop. But you can find me there more and more frequently. I'll be on there, so I always encourage people to check that out. And we touch base on all kinds of different stuff, from the mundane to the fantastical. We all just kind of give our opinions on kind of what's going on. That's basically the gist of what I got going on this year. I plan on going to the Smoky Mountain Conference in Gatlinburg. Last year, I was fortunate enough to be able to speak at it during a session. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but I still plan on going because it was a great time. Dr. Meldrum is going to be there, so I'm hoping I get to meet him and then kind of have another one of my celebrities off my checklist there. Townsend in Tennessee is having a Bigfoot festival, their second annual one this year. Last year, it was huge. There was over 40,000 people there. Big outdoor festival, different speakers. Last year, Cliff Barackman was there. This year, they got Kenny Irish. He's going to be there. He's kind of a new on the scene. He's got a book out there. Real nice guy. I've talked to him a few times. So there's a lot of big stuff going on, a lot of events happening in the area. So I think it's going to be a good year. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Sounds like you're going to be busy, man.
I hope so. I hope so.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us. I enjoy hearing about your thoughts on the subject, on cryptids, of course, and I enjoy learning about the Amazon and your life down there. I find it very
Anytime.
interesting. But maybe we can have you back on. Maybe Leo will get better, and we can all, three discuss things.
Sure.
I know he's had a lot of good experiences and he's got a lot of good insight on stuff. But I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. And I'll go ahead and kick you off the thing, and
All right.
I'll talk to you next time, brother.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, man. I've always liked your work and what you do, so just keep doing what you do.
I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, be good.
You too.
All right, guys. That's winds up the show for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking to Justin, smart guy, studied a lot, and we should never discount book learning or internet learning, or what you want to call it. Used to it's called book learning. Research, online research is what we can refer to it more so now. That's a very important part of any research we do into cryptids is, historical data and sighting data and things like that all play a part in discovery of a new cryptid or more information about a cryptid. And that's always been my main personal goal, is to learn more on a personal level about Bigfoot. That's my main cryptid. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and hopefully next week, if not then, the week after, we can have another show. But we're going to try to do these on every Friday. Not sure we can, but we'll try to let everybody know in times that you can get on and enjoy it. And I appreciate you guys for being in the chat. And if we didn't get to your question or we didn't answer it, or sorry about that. Maybe we'll get it next time. And you guys enjoy your evening and enjoy your weekend coming up, and be safe. And we'll see you guys next time.